Resorts World was meant to be the next legend on the Strip. A $4.3 billion masterpiece of extreme luxury, cutting-edge technology, and sheer ambition, throwing open its doors in 2021 with expectations that were sky high. But now, less than 4 years into its story, those glittering halls are feeling eerily quiet as revenue plummets by 22% year over year. Profit margins are vanishing into thin air, and for the second quarter in a row, the number of occupied rooms keeps dropping. So how on earth did the most expensive resort in Las Vegas history go from a soaring success to a chilling cautionary tale almost overnight? To get to the bottom of that, we have to pull back the velvet curtain and expose what's really draining the life out of Resorts World's grand promise, and figure out why so many people are asking, why is Resorts World Las Vegas so empty? You see, when Resorts World Las Vegas finally opened its doors back in June of 2021, it wasn't just another flashy new building on the Strip. It was a powerful declaration. With the backing of the global giant Genting Berhad and a jaw-dropping $4.3 billion price tag, this project instantly became the most expensive resort ever built in the history of Las Vegas. The vision behind it all was crystal clear: to create a modern mega resort that would completely redefine luxury, technology, and sheer scale for a whole new generation of Vegas visitors. Rising up from the north end of the Strip, the property boasted 3 shimmering hotel towers, each offering its own unique branded experience: Hilton, Conrad, and the ultra-luxe Crockfords, which together offered over 3,500 rooms and suites. The list of amenities read like a fantasy for high rollers and world travelers. We're talking about a 117,000 square foot casino floor, absolutely packed with the latest slot machines and table games, and a massive 5,000 seat theater built specifically for superstar residencies. And that's not all. There were more than 40 different bars and restaurants, all curated by celebrity chefs and world-renowned culinary masters. Beyond the gambling and fine dining, the resort featured a sprawling, magnificent pool complex, a collection of high-end retail shops, a day club and nightclub partnership with the legendary Zouk Group from Singapore, and a dedicated spa and wellness sanctuary. Every single detail, from the futuristic digital check-in kiosks to the completely cashless gaming systems, was designed to deliver on the promise of a tech-forward experience, one that would set a new gold standard for how Vegas would look and feel in the 2020s. But Genting's ambition wasn't just about offering luxury. It was about creating a spectacle on an unimaginable scale. The resort's enormous digital LED facade, which stretched over 100,000 square feet, immediately became an iconic landmark, lighting up the night sky with breathtaking art and ads that you could see from miles away. The property's grand opening week was a media frenzy, drawing in massive crowds and making headlines with A-list performances, all wrapped in a feeling of unshakable optimism that Resorts World would kickstart a new era of development on the North Strip. The bet they made was incredibly bold: invest billions, completely overshadow the competition, and capture the hearts and wallets of the next generation of Vegas visitors. Everyone from families and international tourists to tech-savvy millennials, and of course the global super rich. With so much money poured in and the entire world watching, the stakes simply could not have been any higher. The sheer size and cost of the resort created immense expectations, not just for Genting and its investors, but for the future of the entire city. In a town that lives and dies by packed casino floors and sold-out hotel suites, the arrival of Resorts World was supposed to signal a major turning point, a new high watermark for what Las Vegas could truly offer. But as the months ticked by, the harsh realities of running a mega resort in a city that's always changing would put every piece of that $4.3 billion dream to the ultimate test. Alright, let's start by digging into the numbers because they tell a pretty grim story. In the first quarter of 2025, Resorts World Las Vegas reported revenues of just $166 million. That represents a staggering 22% drop when you compare it to the same time last year, when the property managed to pull in $214 million. And believe me, the financial bleeding didn't just stop at the top line. Their earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, what the industry calls EBITDA, took a nosedive, falling from a healthy $40 million in the first quarter of 2024 to a mere $10 million in the first quarter of 2025. That's a 75% collapse in profitability in just 12 months, and it's a blaring alarm bell that their operating costs are devouring what little money they have left. This painful profit squeeze is being felt in every single corner of the business. If you look back at the last quarter of 2024, their room occupancy had already slipped to 83.6%, down from a much healthier 87.7% the year before, and the average daily rate, which is a crucial indicator of how much they can charge per room, fell from $319 down to $286. By the second quarter of 2025, occupancy was just hovering around 80%. That is way below the nearly 90% level that Resorts World was celebrating in its early days. And let's be clear, these aren't just minor dips. For a mega resort that was built to fill thousands of rooms and keep casino floors buzzing around the clock, losing even a few percentage points in occupancy translates directly into millions upon millions of dollars in lost revenue. And now, industry analysts are pointing to a perfect storm of causes. That initial wave of post-pandemic excitement, it was a flash in the pan. And just as quickly as it came, it vanished, leaving Resorts World completely exposed to quiet midweek lulls and a worryingly sparse convention calendar. And to make matters worse, the fight for survival on the north end of the Strip turned into an all-out war, with every neighboring casino scrapping for the exact same customers. At the very same time, the Las Vegas boom itself was starting to cool off. Fewer planes were landing, and the visitors who did arrive were holding onto their wallets a little tighter. All of this was happening under the watchful eye of Genting, the parent company, who were now staring down the barrel of a $4.3 billion investment that just wasn't paying off. But here's the thing, the property's massive costs, the debt, the payroll, the utility bills, they don't get smaller just because fewer people are checking in. The fallout wasn't just on a spreadsheet. You could feel it in the very pulse of the resort. With occupancy plummeting, restaurants began cutting their hours. The high-end retail shops saw more echoes than foot traffic, and the entertainment venues were practically begging to fill seats on any night that wasn't a major holiday weekend. The casino, which was once sold as this glamorous hub for international whales and high rollers, was now leaning on cheap promotions and discounted games just to get bodies in the door. It created this vicious cycle of discounting that crushed their profit margins, where every single dollar they earned was costing Genting more and more to bring in. Believe me, these numbers were a sign of something much worse than a bad quarter. They pointed to a much deeper, more existential question. How on earth do you keep a place this massive afloat when the market isn't handing you full rooms and premium prices on a silver platter anymore? The financial cracks weren't just showing, they were turning into canyons, and with every quarter that ticked by, the pressure to stop the bleeding grew more and more desperate. Then, in March of 2025, the other shoe dropped. The reckoning arrived. The Nevada Gaming Commission slammed Resorts World Las Vegas with a staggering $10.5 million fine. This wasn't just any penalty, it was the second largest in the entire history of the state. The charge? A catastrophic failure to stop dirty money from flowing through their casino, specifically how they handled big money players with some very shady backgrounds, and repeatedly dropped the ball on basic compliance. The regulators laid it all out in a damning 31-page complaint, detailing exactly how Resorts World simply allowed millions to be washed through its casino without asking the most basic questions about where the funds came from. The most jaw-dropping example involved a man named Matthew Bohr, a known illegal bookmaker who waltzed in and deposited over $2.5 million and was allowed to play for months without anyone really taking a closer look. For more than a year, their own compliance staff had been waving red flags, but executives and casino hosts just looked the other way. The property was handing out credit and comping flights for VIPs tied to illegal gambling operations, all while the required suspicious activity reports were left to gather dust. But this settlement was about more than just writing a massive check. Resorts World was forced to agree to a whole new, incredibly strict set of rules. The resort now has to hang on to all of its anti-money laundering training records for a full 5 years, a huge step up from what's considered standard practice. They had to seriously beef up their compliance department, bringing in new people whose only job was to perform due diligence, check the source of funds, and keep a constant watch on their high-risk guests. The deal also demanded an independent audit of their entire anti-money laundering program within 2 years, with regular progress reports sent directly to the regulators. It wasn't just the back office either. Every single host and marketing employee was now forced to go through retraining from the ground up, and the casino's internal controls were put under a permanent microscope, watched by both state officials and outside consultants. Now, publicly, Genting's executives put on a brave face, claiming the company had poured money into its compliance systems and was dedicated to becoming the best in the business. But behind the scenes, it was an operational nightmare. The burden was immediate. Dozens of staff members were pulled away from their guest-facing jobs and thrown into compliance duties, which immediately slowed down the process for signing up new players and created long, frustrating waits for their VIP services. The resort's reputation, as you can imagine, was in tatters. The media had a field day, linking the Resorts World name to high-profile criminal betting rings and speculating about the fallout for the entire industry. In the months after the announcement, VIP bookings plummeted, and some of their biggest whales quietly packed up their accounts and moved to the competition. For a resort that was already fighting a losing battle against falling revenue and empty rooms, this regulatory bombshell was a whole new layer of crisis. It forced the leadership to focus on legal survival instead of the guest experience, and it made every single operational decision infinitely more complicated, more expensive, and more scrutinized than ever before. But the truth is, the guests had been getting angry long before these regulatory headlines took over. It all really kicked off in late 2024, with what was supposed to be a massive, headline-grabbing partnership, the Mr. Beast Experience. It became a textbook example of how to completely fumble a massive event. People showed up expecting the kind of spectacle only one of the world's biggest YouTube stars could deliver, but what they walked into was pure chaos. Lines for merchandise that stretched for hours, food stalls that were completely empty, and volunteers who looked just as lost as the crowds they were supposed to be directing. It took mere hours for social media to absolutely explode with complaints. By the very next morning, a tidal wave of refund requests was crashing down, with some furious guests threatening to bypass them entirely and go straight to their banks. In the aftermath, the event organizers finally confessed that last-minute staff cuts and a catastrophic failure to coordinate with the venue left them completely overwhelmed by the sheer number of people. But the operational nightmare wasn't just a one-off for special events. Throughout all of 2024, the resort's fundamental promise to its guests was consistently broken by failing tech and a chronic lack of staff. Take the software upgrade for the hotel's management system. It was meant to make check-in smoother and personalize offers, but instead it backfired in the most spectacular way imaginable. For 3 agonizing hours during a packed summer weekend, every single computer at the front desk was frozen solid, leaving hundreds of frustrated guests completely stranded in the lobby. You had VIPs just turning around and walking out, families forced to sit on their luggage, and the frontline staff desperately trying to check people in by hand like it was 1985. Internal IT reports later placed the blame squarely on a bungled update from a vendor and an astonishing lack of any backup plan. For the guests, the only thing more memorable than the giant LED screen outside was the endless wait just to get a key to their room. Complaints about dining and service became a constant recurring theme on every review site, and even with the Better Business Bureau, guests told stories of impossibly long waits just to be seated at a restaurant, menu items that were almost never in stock, and restaurants that would just shut down abruptly without a word of warning. And when you talked to the staff, a very simple, grim explanation emerged. Wave after wave of layoffs and budget cuts had gutted both the number of employees and the hours spent training them. By the end of 2024, the average frontline worker lasted less than 8 months, and the training for anyone new had been slashed by nearly half. What you ended up with was a revolving door of inexperienced employees, agonizingly slow service, and guest frustration that was boiling over. These weren't just isolated screw-ups. These operational failures weren't just tarnishing the resort's reputation. They were actively chasing away repeat customers and lucrative group bookings. Convention planners started pointing to the constant uncertainty as the main reason they were taking their massive events somewhere else. For a place that was built on a promise of futuristic convenience and effortless luxury, the reality had become long lines, constant glitches, and a whole lot of apologies. The incredible goodwill they had built during their grand opening week had completely evaporated, replaced by viral videos of angry customers and endless demands for refunds. In the court of public opinion, Resorts World was quickly becoming the weakest link on the Las Vegas Strip, and the competition on the north end of the Strip had never been more brutal. Resorts World found itself completely surrounded by its rivals, Encore, Wynn, and the newly opened Fontainebleau. All of them were fighting for the same ever-shrinking pool of visitors. Each of these properties already had a rock-solid reputation and a fiercely loyal customer base, which makes it incredibly difficult for a newcomer to peel those visitors away. Wynn and Encore especially especially have spent decades perfecting their craft, setting a gold standard for luxury that is almost impossible to replicate. Then you have Fontainebleau, which burst onto the scene with its Miami cool and a fresh marketing blitz, adding a whole new layer of pressure and stealing the spotlight from both wealthy travelers and big-shot convention organizers. The market data from the first half of 2025 paints a very bleak picture. The number of visitors to the entire strip is down, with a serious drop-off in tourists coming midweek and a very noticeable decline in group and convention bookings. The Las Vegas Convention Center itself reported a major slowdown in events, and the huge trade shows that used to fill tens of thousands of rooms were now booking smaller blocks or just leaving town altogether. For Resorts World, a mega resort designed to thrive on packed rooms and a constant flow of people, it gets hit the hardest when that demand dries up. Even the smallest dips in citywide tourism have a massive impact, translating directly into empty hotel towers and casino floors that are eerily quiet. On top of that, room rates were getting squeezed. As more and more hotels fought over fewer and fewer guests, the average daily rates began to fall all across the strip. Resorts World's average daily rate took a nosedive, falling from $319 to just $286 year over year, while its occupancy fell to a worrying 80%. And these are not just abstract figures, they represent very real, immense pressure on their revenue, with every single empty room and every discounted rate carving a piece out of their bottom line. All the while, their established competitors were fighting back with aggressive loyalty offers, exclusive high-roller events, and laser-focused promotions, making it even harder for Resorts World to reclaim any of the ground it had lost. And looking beyond the strip, you could see broader economic storm clouds gathering. National travel trends were showing that people were cutting back on their fun money, and Las Vegas was starting to feel the chill. You see, guests were tightening their wallets, spending less on rooms, food, and the casino floor, which meant every operator was in a dogfight for every last dollar. For Resorts World, this combination of brutal local competition and a cooling market meant that just fixing things internally wasn't going to be nearly enough. The resort had to find a way to scream for attention in a very crowded, very unforgiving city, where even the smallest stumble could lead to a catastrophic fall. Genting's reaction to Resorts World's nosedive was both incredibly fast and meticulously planned. Facing down regulatory fines and watching the money drain away, the company kicked off a huge recovery plan they internally called Resorts World 2.0. Now, while they kept the exact details of who got fired and who got hired under wraps, a quick look at company filings and earnings calls tells the whole story. A new management team was parachuted in early in 2025 with a simple, brutal mission: get back in line with the rules and start making money again. Their first order of business? Making the whole operation brutally efficient. Genting's new leadership ordered their teams to dissect every single line of spending, from employee schedules to contracts for supplies, searching for any chance to cut costs without making the guest experience even worse. Then, the summer of 2025 brought a truly audacious move. They completely waived both resort fees and parking fees. This was unheard of, a total break from how Vegas works, all designed to pack the place with people and get cash flowing, especially while their competitors were still squeezing guests with those extra charges. And believe it or not, the gamble paid off, at least in the beginning. By the end of the second quarter, revenue had climbed to a solid $180 million, which was an 8% jump from the previous quarter. And their adjusted profit, what the pros call EBITDA, it nearly doubled, rocketing from $10 million in the first quarter to $18 million in the second. Now, these numbers were still a shadow of the $50 million in EBITDA they posted a year earlier, but that rebound gave a crucial glimmer of hope to everyone from worried investors to the frontline staff. On the casino floor, Resorts World went all in on the high rollers, pouring money into targeted marketing for their VIPs and bringing back some of the lavish perks that had vanished during their compliance nightmare. At the very same time, the property beefed up its compliance department and locked down its vetting protocols, exactly as the Nevada Gaming Commission settlement demanded. Constant staff retraining and regular audits became the new normal, with the resort now legally required to keep all its clean money training records for 5 years. But the Wall Street analysts, they remained wary, pointing out that this early progress was incredibly fragile and that a stain on your reputation takes a very long time to wash out. Still, those second quarter results proved that Genting's focus on the bottom line and their operational overhaul were starting to slow the bleeding. But the billion-dollar question remained. Could these moves actually restore Resorts World to the palace it promised to be, or were they just stabilizing it as a lesser version of its dream? Let's not forget, in the first quarter of 2025, Resorts World Las Vegas reported a staggering 22% drop in revenue and a devastating 75% plunge in profits. And this was only 4 years after it opened as the Strip's $4.3 billion promise of unparalleled luxury. The resort got slammed with a $10.5 million fine from regulators for some serious creative accounting failures, faced a storm of public backlash after the disastrous Mr. Beast event, and was drowning in non-stop complaints about its guest service. So even after the leadership was replaced and a turnaround plan was in motion, the number of guests and the rates they were paying continued to disappoint, with the second quarter of 2025 showing only the faintest signs of life. Many internal documents are still hidden from public view, and the details of their future plans are a closely guarded secret. But what has become painfully clear is that in Las Vegas, a shiny, state-of-the-art building alone is no guarantee of long-term survival. The story of Resorts World now serves as a chilling warning to everyone on the Strip. In a market that is constantly shifting beneath your feet, keeping your promises to your guests and to the regulators is just as vital as the spectacular grand openings and the glittering amenities.